So today we're going to be talking about the Skorpekh destroyers as voted in by you guys. We had 1,700 votes. I did leave it an extra day though. But 1,700 of you guys voted. 51% of you said the Skorpekh destroyers. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And we're going to grab a random comment from the previous video with the Triax Stalker it was, wasn't it? Let's go with Randy Western X2D. Finally my choice one. Can't wait to watch. So yeah, shout out to you. That person has obviously voted for the Triax Stalker. So let's get into this then, the Skorpekh destroyers. Now we previously did a video with the Skorpekh Lord a few months back, and I mean this was when the video concept was more of a unit review than the important questions. So it's not quite the same, but some of the information may sort of overlap. Right, Skorpekh destroyers, 90 points for 3, 180 points for 6, and for every 3 models you get a Plasmacyte. Cool, we'll talk about that a bit more later on at some stage. Now they're one of our melee options we've got within our Necrons codex. They don't have any ranged attacks, of course. Let's get into the questions. Again, I've not counted the questions. I should keep reminding myself to do that before I start. So the first question is, should you add a Skorpekh Lord to the unit? Now the Skorpekh Lord brings 2 abilities to the unit itself. United in Destruction to give the entire unit lethal hits, which is very valuable. And Crimson Harvest. Basically, if you make a charge move, you can throw out some mortal wounds. Unless you roll a 1, then you're not going to do anything. But you could roll a 6 and do the D3 plus 3. So it's really cool. And you can do some mortal wound bomb before you've even actually done your attacks. Now, for me, the Skorpekh Lord is an absolute must. It doesn't matter what unit size you've got. We'll talk about that as well later on. Don't worry about that. But it doesn't matter what the unit size is. 3s, 6s. I think you always take a Skorpekh Lord. Not just because of the lethal hits and the mortal wound bomb, but also you've got enhancement options now. And don't forget there will be some detachment bonuses for leaders and things like that. Again, we'll talk about that in a bit. So, do you add a Skorpekh Lord? For me, 100%. Definitely. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? The damage output is sort of the same as having 3 extras. It's probably a bit more, in fact. And you've got extra buffs and bonuses as well. And the invuln save, don't forget. Next question, what's the best attachment for Skorpekh destroyers? Now, as much as the Annihilation Legion screams out Skorpekh destroyers and well, any destroyers and flayed ones, I prefer to go down the route of the Awakened Dynasty. Now, that Awakened Dynasty, you grab that Skorpekh Lord that we just mentioned, now all of a sudden you're hitting on 2s. Because you've got a +1 to the hit roll when you've got a leader in the unit, which you've got. So hitting on 2s is nice. You're going to be re-rolling 1s anyway, naturally, with the Skorpekh destroyers. On the charge, you re-roll all hit rolls, but if you're hitting on 2s, you're re-rolling the 1s anyway. Unless there's a negative modifier, but then it will come into play. 3s re-rolling everything. It kind of gives you more confidence, in fact, in rolling all your dice again. Even the ones that hit, let's say you roll loads of 3s. It gives you confidence to pick all those 3s and 4s and 5s up and roll them again, going for lethal hits. Because even if you roll them again and they become 2s and 4s, they're still hits. But you're going to gain some more lethal hits in there. Yes, you may also roll some 1s, but lethal hits are more important than those 1s, I believe, because now you don't need to roll to wound. With this attachment as well, you've of course unlocked a couple of decent enhancement options. The Veil of Darkness is pretty good. Move them around the battlefield. It will give them a 9-inch charge though, but you can make a 9-inch charge. Netherrealm Casket I also like for stealth, because they've not got much durability, 3+ armor with no invulnerable save. They do need a bit of help in the defense department, so that will help. Also, stratagem-wise, Protocol of Hungry Void I think is pretty good, because you're going to have not only a +1 to the strength, so those Skorpekh hyperphase weapons is what they're called nowadays. Skorpekh hyperphase weapons, they're strength 7, which is a bit of an annoying statistic, strength 7, because against toughness 3 you're wounded on 2s anyway, even with strength 6. And against toughness 4, so 1 extra toughness for your opponent's units, you're wounded on 3s. Whereas if this was strength 8, you'll be wounding those on 2s as well. But with the Protocol Hungry Void, you're going to +1 to the strength to make it strength 8. So against those standard intercessor bodies, you're wounded on 2s. You're also going to get a bit of AP, extra 1 AP because of the character within the unit, the Skorpekh Lord, which puts them to -3 AP. So again, those Space Marine bodies have got a 6+ armor save. And each one that goes through, damage 2. Nice. So that's a very good stratagem to use in that detachment. Next one, where should they go in game? This was quite a popular question in one of the previous videos, so I thought let's regurgitate the question and talk some tactics. Personally though, I like to put them in reserves. I like to put them in strategic reserves and use rapid ingress. Why do I like to use rapid ingress for 1 CP? Well, you bring them in on your opponent's turn, but you make sure you find a ruin to do it with. So you bring them in off the table edge, behind a ruin. They're not going to get line of sight. Well, your opponent is going to get line of sight on the destroyers. And then when your turn comes around, you're going to move 8 inches because that's their standard movement. And now you're pretty much an inch away, or inch or 2 away, whatever it is. And the charge is virtually impossible to fail. Whereas if you brought them in your turn, you've got a 9-inch charge because you've already done your movement. You can't then move another 8 inches and then charge. You've already done your movement by just putting them on the board. But with rapid ingress, you're doing that movement in your opponent's turn, just 1 CP. So you're virtually guaranteeing the charge by using that stratagem. Also, they've got the infantry keyword, don't forget. So when you are coming in behind a ruin, you're going to charge straight through that ruin. You're going to move through the ruin, charge through the ruin, and that ruin, you're going to use it to your advantage. It's going to block your opponent's line of sight, but your infantry, so you can then run through it afterwards. If you do start on the tabletop, ruins are still your best friend. You do need to get some sort of cover. Ideally, just completely block line of sight, because as I said before, 3+ armor, no invulnerable save. If you've not got that stealth enhancement, that's problematic as well. You're going to at least need to find some sort of cover save, but that doesn't really make them much more durable. So ruins are your best friend, and of course their speed. 8 inches of speed is what makes them unique and good, I suppose, because they're going to get to where they want to go pretty quick and get the charge off. I mean, in my opinion, their durability should be slightly better. I wouldn't give them an invuln save. I think that's too much, but I feel like they deserve a feel no pain save, even if it was a 5+. I think like Triarch units or Destroyer units deserve... No, the Destroyer units more so, because they're sort of meant to be a bit mad and all that. I think I would give them a 5+ if it was up to me writing the codex, which it isn't. So yeah, no feel no pain save for them. But sort of going back to that question, that's how I would bring them into the game. But where should they go? You can go for objectives, but that's not really their thing. Yes, they've got OC2, but save that for your Immortals. Save that for other units. Don't be using your destroyers. They're 30 points each. Get them into stuff. Get them taking on infantry, taking on or tagging stuff as well. Not just taking them on, just tagging things that are a bit more expensive. They are going to hit hard, but infantry especially, they will just go straight through them. When to pop a Plasmacyte? So when's the best time to pop a Plasmacyte? These are the once per battle items. Get 1 for every 3 in a unit, 1 for every 3 models in a unit, and it basically gives you devastating wounds. Now, of course, if you're rolling for lethal hits with Skorpekh Lords, you've already rolled the wound roll, so you're not going to be able to roll for a devastating wound. So it kind of clashes slightly, but there's nothing wrong with having both abilities on. Now, when to use it? As soon as you can. You don't know how long your Skorpekh Destroyers are going to survive for, and the last thing you want is for them to have been in a few fights and you've saved your Plasmacyte for a rainy day, and then you lose your unit and you've not even bothered using your Plasmacyte. Pop it as soon as you can, unless you're charging some real small toughness 3 stuff, you know, a unit of Rippers or something, then yeah, you don't need it. You're going to clean through them anyway. You don't need to use your devastating wounds. But as soon as you get into the correct targets, yeah, definitely would use it 100%. I mean, especially stuff that's got like invulnerable saves, because you don't want to be giving them a save if you can help it. So yeah, you've got lethal hits, devastating wounds, absolutely maximise your output. Next question, relation to unit size, but it's actually from one of you guys. I'm going to have to zoom in because I can't read my own notes, it's too small. And this one is from Tarigal4235, another 4-digit pin code. What is it with you guys? All right. How many units is optimal to take? 2 lots of 3 with 2 lords for the mortal wound bomb, or as an anti-minimum size units, or 1 × 6 of a lord for lethal bomb as a universal unit. So basically what they're asking is what kind of unit size should we be taking with Skorpekh Destroyers? Now, we did do this video a few months back, where we did a lot of maths with Skorpekh Destroyers damage output. Now, admittedly, I didn't do the unit of 3 with a lord. I didn't really think much of it until you guys made comments about it, and I was like, damn, you know what, that's probably the best option there, and I've not done it in the video. So those maths aren't included. That is a reasonable unit. 3-man units, you get 1 Plasmacyte and you stick a Skorpekh Lord in there, that's 170 points. Especially good with the Awakened Dynasty, as we kind of spoke about earlier. 3 on its own, not enough for me. You need the Skorpekh Lord. We said that as well earlier. I think you need the Skorpekh Lord. You may as well pay for it. If you're going to bother bringing 90 points worth of Skorpekh Destroyers, you may as well bring a Lord there to give them some extra punch and an extra, all the abilities and stuff. Also, it's good enough because your opponent won't see it as a priority. 3 Skorpekh Destroyers on a Lord isn't a priority target for them. What did we just say? 170 points is not a massive priority when there's Catan on the board, or Doomsday Arcs, or Monoliths, or whatever you're taking. There's juicier targets. 6 on their own without a Skorpekh Lord. Again, you may as well, if you're going to be paying that amount of points, you may as well get the Lord in there and maximise the unit. So the Lord goes in regardless. The Skorpekh Lord goes in regardless. The only issue with the Skorpekh Lord and the 6 is, yes, it's punchy, super punchy, but they're prone to blast. Well, they're going to be prone to blast anyway, in fact. You only need 5 for blast. But also the footprint is pretty big for a 7-man unit with the Skorpekh Lord involved, because their bases are... How big are their bases? They're 50mm bases, aren't they, these Skorpekh Destroyers? The Skorpekh Lord is 60, the others are 50. So having 7 of these pretty big bases hiding is not going to be easy. It's not going to be straightforward. It's not going to be easy for things like hyperphasing in or strategic reserves. You might get screened out with a large footprint that size. Also, using a Monolith as well. If you're using a Monolith and bringing them out of the Eternity Gate, that could be problematic, again, with a unit that size and that footprint. And it also can get quite congested as well. Much harder to hide 7 models than it is 4. So for me, right now, I would rather have 3 Skorpekh Destroyers and the Skorpekh Lord and double it up. If you want to double it up, take 2 units like that, identical, and there'll be less of a priority. Now, what are the best targets in melee? Again, I'm going to revert you back to that video. We did do some statistics in Math Hammer, so shout out to that video. But the best targets, let's go through the weapon first, just to get on the same page with you guys. 4 attacks per model, hit on 3s, potentially 2s with the Awakened Dynasty perhaps, strength 7, -2 and 2 damage, and you're re-rolling your hit rolls of a 1, or everything if you made the charge move. Now these guys do hit pretty well, they do. They tear through toughness 3 units, full units that is. Full toughness 4 units, they go through them like butter. They can clear minimum size units of Terminators, almost, kill 4 or 5 of them. So virtually any infantry type of unit is getting dealt with. They're getting dealt with because the amount of attacks, the strength is high, so you're wounded on at least 3s. AP is good, damage is good, and you're re-rolling stuff. Lethal hits and dev wounds on top of that as well. So you've got everything you need there for infantry. As for the bigger stuff, the light and mid-sized vehicles or monsters, you remove them. You simply remove them. Again, if you revert back to that video, you'll see why. That they just take so much damage in small doses that they just get absolutely battered. Now, when you're talking about the big stuff, the big toughness 14, you're going to knock half the wounds off perhaps. And that's just with a 3-man unit with a Lord. They literally do work. They do work. They're just a bit glass hammer. They hit hard, but as soon as you touch them, they suffer. So the best targets, they can hit anything. They really can hit anything. I think infantry is just the best option because of the damage 2 stuff, but they literally can go for anything. So maybe the best way to answer this question is, how many points can you remove from your opponent's list? If you can see, I don't know, 10 intercessors worth, I don't know what they're worth nowadays, let's say 100 points, maybe less. And you can see, I don't know, 5 Terminators on this side, and they're worth a bit more. You just go for the max points. You try and remove your opponent's points. That's the way I see it. Maybe you guys don't agree, I'm not sure. Let me know down below. Next one, do they have any competition in the codex? Yes, they do. I mean, you've got Lich Guard. There's 2 versions of Lich Guard. You can take the Strength 8 weapons, which are obviously better in strength, better AP, with the war size, but they are much slower, moving only 5 inches or 6 inches, whatever it is. They're slower. People tend to take the Sword and Shield anyway, which are less strength, that's strength 6, -1 AP, 1 damage, so not as good. So there is competition, but it's slower and has a lot of negatives to it. The Praetorians are quicker, 100 points for 5 now. They're actually quicker because they move 10 inches. They pretty much always fight first because they can fall back and recharge. And because they're so quick, you're going to get the jump on your opponent to make the charge anyway. The damage is less and they're only strength 5 and have less attacks as well. So competition, yes, but I think they are not as good. Canoptic Wraiths, very pricey of course, as you know, and ideally you want a Technomancer with a Feel No Pain save. 335 points for a unit of 6 with a Technomancer, instead of the 260 points that you'd pay for a full unit of Skorpekh Destroyers with a Lord. Only strength 6 and only -1 AP, and they hit on 4s naturally, 3s within the Awakened Dynasty, but they do have better defensive traits. So that one I think is more competition for me. And there's also the C'tans as well. I mean, they're sub 300 points, they are defensively strong, they're offensively strong. I think they're probably the better option because of their survivability. There's no point having your Skorpekh Destroyers go in, charge, kill something and die, whereas the C'tan can go in slower, kill something, survive, go on to something else. The only problem though, these are monsters, so they're not going to be able to go through the ruins in the same way that infantry do. They're going to have to go round and go round very slow. Fly also isn't going to help them either. So is there competition? Yes, but there's pros and cons to every one of these units, as you would expect. Is there any other synergy options for the Skorpekh Destroyers? We briefly mentioned it earlier with the Monolith. I want to mention this one now in a bit more detail with the Eternity Gate. Because they're infantry, they can pop out whether they're in reserves, whether they're on the battlefield, they can pop out of the Eternity Gate. There's also some stratagems within the Hypercrypt Legion that will be even more useful. For example, you have got the Dimensional Corridor stratagem, so they can charge out the Eternity Gate. It is 2 CP though. We've got the Hyperphasic Recall. If you lose a model, you can literally teleport back to base, the Monolith, as if it was like our movement phase, but it's their turn. So it's kind of cool. It can rescue your unit and potentially move a bit of OC around or just completely change the game. Now obviously if you're using the Hyperphasic Recall in the fight phase, you only would do that if you've already fought. If you're still yet to fight, you want to fight, unless you've got like one model left. Then maybe it is worth teleporting back to try and start reanimating back again. But it's a nice neat trick to use. So guys, that is was it 8 or 9 questions? I've lost count. Whatever amount of questions it was, make sure you're checking out the latest polls and I will see you in the next one.